I could probably afford a small house really far away from all my family and friends. And people were like, oh, well, at least you can do that, so shut up.
Welcome to Ireland Unfiltered. This week's guest is Melanie Murphy. You might know Melanie from her YouTube channel, which is she's probably one of the most successful Irish people on YouTube, and she's got a fame that is global, really. It was fascinating talking to her about the whole way she launched her channel, the difference in her fame maybe in Ireland compared to abroad, and also finding a balance between what she shares online and being herself. Because I think there is a tendency to feel that anybody who has a YouTube channel like hers is sharing everything about her life, and that really isn't the case. She's just published her first novel, If Only, which is in the shops now, and it was a really interesting and fascinating chat. So before we go to that, don't forget to subscribe to Ireland Unfiltered on all the usual channels, and if you like the show, please leave a review. Melanie, welcome to Ireland Unfiltered.
Thanks a million.
Congratulations, by the way. You got engaged last week?
I did. Officially engaged.
Engaged.
Been engaged for a year. He gave me an onion ring because he couldn't afford a ring at the time, and I gladly accepted it, but no one took it seriously.
Okay.
So it was kind of a thing, the family were like, you have to give her a real ring, tradition and all. And I'm not that traditional of a person. I was wearing it on my right hand, and I got nothing but shite off people for the first 24 hours. And even in person, like online especially, they're like, why are you wearing it on that hand? It's because I chew the knuckles on this hand.
Okay.
But peer pressure is after making me switch the bloody thing. Yeah, but he's a gem. I've known him since I was quite young.
And how does he feel? We'll talk. Your new book, If Only, is out now.
Yeah.
Which is your first novel.
First novel, yes.
But you also have a memoir, which I've read, and I believe your fiance read it too when you started dating. Did he?
Yeah, he read it before most of our dates, and I was just like, you're cheating now. You should be asking me all these things on dates. And in fairness, like, he has known me for such a long time, like long before I had a channel or anything, and we always kind of had a bit of a spark there, but be different. I'd be with someone, then he'd be free, and then I'd be single and he'd be with someone. And it is one of those things where it was such a word baby. Like I birthed it, and then it went into the shops and it wasn't mine anymore, and I realized anyone can pick this up and know so much about me. It was very cathartic writing it, but I didn't enjoy writing the first book at all. It was kind of, obviously I talk about a lot of real personal things, like I had a miscarriage and a sexual assault that happened when I was younger, and a lot of things I've not talked about online because, to be honest, I find it very difficult to, as anyone would, to be really vulnerable about those kinds of things. There's certain things I feel quite comfortable now talking about online. And for me, it's all about kind of connecting to other people who've gone through the same things. That's what it's always been for me, and that's what attracted me to YouTube, YouTube specifically. But with the book, like, family members can look through it, and there's a whole section about sex, and there's, all sorts in there. And, and my mom read it, and I remember just being like, no, like, I don't think I really thought it through. It's the same with YouTube. But I guess with YouTube, my family know what videos not to watch.
Okay.
It's very apparent when they look at the title and the thumbnail. Don't watch this, know. But with the book, I explained to them, I was writing that for teenagers. And the kind of, I guess the foundation of the whole thing is all about living in this world that's quite plugged in. And all the things that come along with that, like body image stuff, people comparing themselves on Instagram and all this. And I there were so many things that I felt like, so many channels of what I do on YouTube that I wanted to explore more in depth. But the main reason I did that first book was because I always wanted to publish fiction, and they approached me about the first book because they saw that I had an audience, obviously. I don't think they realised I've always loved writing, and it's been a big part of my life. And I said to them, I'll do it if you let me pitch fiction if it does well.
Okay.
So it was kind of like a bribe.
Okay, so If Only is the result of the success of the first book.
Yeah, and If Only as well, it's about a woman who can glimpse parallel versions of her life.
Yeah.
I'm a real fecker for constantly thinking what if.
Yeah.
And, you know, now I try and be a lot more present. But in the past, I used to torture myself
Did you?
about, you know, what if I'd done this differently? And like, if I hadn't had the miscarriage, I could have a 10-year-old child. What would my life look like? What if I'd stayed with that person? You know, all these things I used to just, you know, be real in my head. And I think that contributed to a lot of anxiety and depression I used to feel as I was kind of trapped in my own head. And so I used that kind of as a writing tool. I always told my granny I'd publish fiction, and she used to, before she died, she used to bring me to the library every week, and she, you know, we'd read books together. I'd sit on the floor reading while she'd be up on her chair, and she'd read 5 books a week. And after she died, I was like, I have to do this. So I actually started writing books in my late teens. One of the first ones was like a high fantasy young adult book and all. And I think, yeah, so doing this and having support from my online audience has been insane, like unreal. And, you know, some people have been quite not angry at me, but just sort of resentful about the fact that I got to publish, and they're kind of seeing it as, oh, well, this is all just your YouTube, and there's loads of people who have degrees in English who would kill to be in your position, as if I'm not grateful for it. Every single day, I'm constantly pinching myself about it. It's been in the charts for weeks, and it's, you know, it's on its second reprint. Like, that kind of stuff it means so much more to me than a video doing well, because it's a year and a half of work. Like.
Yeah. But I think this is interesting, and we will go into this for, you know, whoever is watching or listening who doesn't know you. Like, you obviously have a huge YouTube following, but like before that, and I kind of, just to go on, one of the things that like strikes me as strange about any of that backlash you get, like, it strikes me that, like, you know, it would seem crazy now to look at somebody who became famous when television became big, became a television star. But back then, people would have said, "Oh, you're not a film star. You haven't made it through movies." Yeah. Like, technology, nothing beats the technology, and YouTube is the technology of the day.
It's mainstream media now.
It's mainstream media.
Yeah.
But take me back then to before YouTube. You were training to be a teacher, and I'm wondering, when you talk about, you know, if only lives and parallel lives, do you ever wonder what it would have been like if you'd continued on that path? Because you got a first-class degree in education.
Education and training from DCU. I still have really fond memories of the place. But I always saw myself teaching and writing. That was kind of my vision for my future. And I was one of those kids who'd, like, you know, put on costumes and perform for my parents, like little narcissists, like most people are. And I think I never, you know, I didn't grow up being like, I'm going to be a YouTuber, I'm going to be a famous person in any regard. So it did all kind of take me by surprise, and I still am kind of rolling with it. But I started out, I did my degree. I was really shy, actually, compared to what I am now. I suppose, like, people who knew me in college do be so shocked seeing me on telly or anything like that. They're like, "What? You're one?" I used to sit in the corner. I had eating disorders at the time. I used to bring in this little lunchbox of, like, fruit and vegetables, and they'd just be slagging me over not eating the canteen food. And I had my channel in my final year of college in DCU, like, and oh my God, the slaggins, like, some people thought it was cool, and others were like, "What are you doing?" And in fairness, the videos I was putting up back then, they were shocking. They were so edited so badly.
And what were they about?
They were essentially filmed on a potato, and they were just me talking about, I don't know, my cats and food and makeup and all that kind of thing. My first video that went viral was actually acne related, because I had chronic acne when I was younger, and I made it for other people with acne, because you know, I was typing in acne makeup or how to get rid of acne, and it was one girl coming up in the whole world. One girl was popping up, and all these other girls had like a spot, and they'd be like, "Here's my acne makeup routine." And I just kind of saw this big gap there, and I figured, like, I had this massive breakout from, was taking this whey powder for when I was exercising, and it gave me this massive breakout. And I was like, I could film something about this, and it might help other people with acne. And it went viral. Right now it has like 18 million views, and it does really make me cringe. And like, I'll say that about videos I made 2 months ago that made me cringe. Obviously I made this when I was quite young, like in my early 20s, whatever, and that actually ended up in newspapers and all sorts of people seeing it who it wasn't intended for, which back in 2013 when I started YouTube didn't happen all that much. Like, you would make something quite niche and only people looking for it would find it. But it had a really unexpected impact on me in that so many people saw it, and I got so much, bullying and trolling, and people saying like, oh, take a bitch to the pool on the first day, and can you imagine waking up next to that? And there was all those kind of comments, but the overwhelming majority of feedback from that was like, thank you. I never see my skin in the media ever. Even actors, actresses, and models with acne, obviously it's very common. I think about 80% of people experience it, but it's just never shown because there's always the makeup, the lights, the Photoshop, and that kind of made me feel so much more comfortable in myself, and actually made me accept it to the point that I'd go out of the house without makeup for the first time in my adult life. And ever since then, I've been constantly peeling back layers of myself on YouTube to kind of reach this state of self-acceptance that I am at now. And it's been a mad journey. Like, I've gone from that to doing, I've made lots of videos about sexuality. I made a short film about abortion, and I've gone into all these different things that I really care about and that I would keep me up at night, kind of thing. And it's been just mad that all these people kind of stuck with me, and more people have jumped on, and now I do feel like I have a massive community, and it's just it's in this little corner of the internet. Like, I can easily go to the shops in my pajamas and people don't know who I am. But it's specific people that follow me. Like, I can see my demographic is mostly women in their 20s.
But like you were saying, if you went to a concert and you're meeting people who follow you, and it's like you do encounter your viewers everywhere you go.
Yeah, the people that freaked me out. It was at Lana Del Rey, and I was like, oh, we all like the same music and all. When I have official meetups, they're always really similar to me. And if I'm walking around town and all, like, I'll have a handful of people each time come up, but I can live very much a non-famous life.
But how much does it go beyond Ireland? And is there a difference between how you have been received in Ireland, maybe by the kind of traditional media, and how you've been received in other countries?
I think so. Like, a lot of my audience is in England, and I'm wanting to settle down here and build my career here. That's why I'm with an Irish publisher, and I love Ireland to bits. Like, I want to be here, but like, I've done, I was on the Ray Darcy show, and I have done media here, but I find that I'm not really considered part of the Irish scene, and I don't really know why that is. I don't know, is it because some people have said to me that I don't kind of embrace my Irishness, but I really don't see how that's the case. Like, I make monthly vlogs, I'm constantly going around Ireland showing the beauty of the place going on. I've made a whole video called Why I Love Ireland. I'm always banging on about Irish stuff and other Irish people. But yeah, I think that's I often wonder, like, is it the way I talk? Like, on YouTube, I tend to over pronunciate, and I my diction I've kind of played with, because people would always be like, what did she say at 3.15? And so instead of saying pretty on YouTube, I'd say pretty. And I've had Irish people being like, who does she think she is? Right. Where is she even from? Because my accent's muddled anyway. Like, I was born, and until I was 6, I lived in Blanche. And then my parents broke up. My dad moved out to Skerries, which is where all my family are. My mum moved all over the place, like Ashburn, Navan. Now she's out in Roscommon. Then my dad had to move to Drogheda for a couple of years, and then Balbriggan. Like, I've lived everywhere. Right. So and then, I watch a lot of people from America and England. So that, people just, I don't know. People have been very supportive in mainstream media. I've had a couple of waves of drama, but it's been like, I stopped being a vegan, and everyone, I had a video got 1 million views in a week, and I had all these people making videos about me, about how evil I was and how I should kill myself. Okay. So I've had a couple of waves of that, but I've never felt like, you know, the Irish media are against me or
Right,
anything
okay.
like that.
But
I
it's
feel,
just the take up hasn't been the same.
yeah, I think
in
I'm
the-
just not necessarily known
Right.
as
Yeah,
being
yeah.
all that Irish. I'm part of like RTE's youth advisory board at the
Right,
minute,
okay.
and I feel like it's changing, it's shifting a little.
But take me back then to when you do that video and you decide like you want to do something about acne. But is there another motivation too? Like, because you say, and in your book you say you for a long part of your life your self-image was on the floor.
Oh yeah.
And was there a sense that there was a community there, or did it come after you made the first video and you saw, like, I know you went the video went viral, that you saw, right,
Yeah.
there's something out there for me. Is that what happened?
So yeah, I had 200 subscribers when I made that video,
Right.
and I never really anticipated myself getting more than like 10,000. And
Hmm.
then I always loved the idea of getting to like 100,000 and making videos kind of similar to what my favorite YouTubers made
Hmm.
at the time. But that was such a far-fetched thing in my head. Yeah. The biggest Irish YouTuber at the time probably had around that 100,000. I was like, wow. But yeah, once that kind of took off, it definitely did pick up my self-image, because, you know, people were complimenting me on like my personality or my sense of humor, or, you know, these other things other than how I looked.
Yeah.
And I kind of started seeing myself as a bit more of a 3D person, and, you know, with more to offer. I was like, wow, like I can make something and all these people around the world can watch it. That's amazing to me, that I didn't have to, you know, normally you grow up and you think you have to go through these hoops of, because there's the gatekeepers with media in the past, like you'd have the gatekeepers, and you couldn't just say what you wanted to say and have people actually listen.
Yeah.
So it's like this stage just manifested, and I was like, right, I can make whatever I want now. And there was a phase I definitely went through a phase where I don't like to say that I went to my head a bit, but it did a little bit. You know, I moved off to LA and I was like,
Okay.
and for a while,
Yeah.
and I just had this massive smack of reality. I was like, what am I doing?
Right.
And I think that was, you know, and I know a lot of people go through that with it, and it's you either keep going that way or you kind of get knocked back down.
Yeah.
You
And
realize,
what brought
like,
you back to earth?
back to reality. I think is when I was over there, I just realized I just did not fit in with that scene, and I was faking it. I was pretending. I was acting like all these other people I watched. I was mimicking them. I was wearing what they wore. I was talking like them. I was doing my background up the same. I was using the same background music in my videos, and it made me feel really embarrassed, actually. But, you know, at the same time, I'm not going to. I don't still feel embarrassed about that.
Okay.
Like, that was part of my journey,
Yeah.
and it's a strange thing to explain to anyone who's not been through it. You know,
But I imagine lots of people in their 20s, if something is taking off like this, they would be like, hell yeah, I'm going to LA. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's, then you would
you
realize.
have an image of it that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
all glam.
And, you know, okay, I'm going to be one of, you know, like it's very hard not to be sucked in by those things for a time.
Do you know what it is? I think even you know, I really listen to constructive criticism from my audience, and people were saying to me, you have changed. You, like, what we subscribe to you for is the fact that you're from Ireland and the fact that you're not like all these other
Okay.
people. And I kind of realized, like, what am I doing? Like, why am I trying so hard to fit in when, like, standing out is all I have?
Right.
Like, people were following me because I was Irish, because of my accent, because of, you know, I was showing them around these places that they'd never seen before. And I think, yeah, I was out in LA for like 2 months, and it was just, I'd be at parties and everything would be about, like, people getting photos. They'd be just standing there on their phone, and they'd just not eat, and they'd just, you know, I had just recovered fully from all of my eating problems. I had orthorexia, I had binge eating problems, because when I was 19 I was very overweight, and it was after I lost the weight I had all these battles with food. And it's actually really common, because losing all that weight usually involves some level of dieting or whatever, and
Yeah.
your body's like starving for food. It's your metabolism slows down, everything. So out in LA, I just really struggled with that. With, you know, I was like, I don't want to be like all these people, and that was a really big year of growth for me. And I lost some mates, like Irish mates, even in the YouTube community. I think they were all noticing it. They were like,
Right.
what is this going off on? Like,
Yeah,
where is she off to? And I'm really glad I kind of had that smack of reality Do you know what I
And
mean?
what was the moment when you realized this is going to be my career, or this could be my career?
I still don't think of it as a career. I feel like it's just one of those things where every year I'm kind of like, right, this is going to slow down, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
this has to slow down, and it's just I've felt like I've been more successful with each year that's passed because the industry is growing. And some might say that's not a good thing, because some people get into, I hate that word influencer, like, but people get into that for the wrong reasons. But it's the same with anything. Like, look at politicians, like they don't all get into it for the right reasons
Yeah,
either. But I see myself as just a creative person, a storyteller, and I like to use different mediums for that. And I am just going to ride the YouTube wave, but build. I'm diversifying, and
Okay.
that's why I want a book. It's just much more like bricks and mortar feeling, and it feels like I'll have my books forever. I'm starting a second novel now, and I just really want to kind of I don't want my whole life to be around like sharing my life on YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've had to pull back certain things because I think when you share too much, you need to have things for yourself. That's why I like the whole engagement thing. Like, we were celebrating it ourselves for like the first year we were engaged, and
Right.
and then kind of putting that online, like, so because it's a weird one. Like, everything becomes quite blurred between your online life and I am myself online. But at the same time, I still think of that as a different person, which is hard to explain. The only other people I feel have ever said it the way it goes on in my head is like people who are known for being them, but they're a comedian, or maybe a presenter or something like that. But it's still, it's nice to have a bit of a separation, and I think because my name is attached to it, like my channel is called after it's just Melanie Murphy, it's my name. People might look at that and be like, that's everything about her, and that we know her, we have her sussed. And I think my content is very specific. It's lifestyle. It's I'll talk about issues sometimes, like to feminism or anything like that. I'll take stuff like that sometimes, but a lot of the time I just want people to leave my platform feeling a bit better about themselves, maybe with a smile on their face, and just, it's a bit of escapism. It's just easy escapism that's free for them to watch.
And has that been something you've had to learn the hard way, like that fact that the line blurs, that you like, 'cause, you came into it and you thought like it was to kind of help you with like things like public speaking and stuff like that, and like listening to you now, it's like that there's that Melanie, and then there's you, who's still like, maybe you're not the same shy person who was in DCU, but like you're still reserved, you're still private, and has establishing the two different identities been tricky?
Yeah, it still is. Every day I kind of still struggle with, what do I share and what do I not share? Why am I sharing this? Like, I have those conversations with myself all the time. And it's a really interesting thing for me, because the internet has become a very large aspect of most people's lives. It's not just people like me. It's like, teenagers, it's online banking, people do shopping online, like so many things are wrapped up with the internet now. So we almost have to have this digital, and I think that's where the narcissism comes in. Is like, back in the day, painters would be paid to paint people, and paint me like this, like paint my skin smooth and make my eyes bigger, and they do have these big grand portraits of themselves in their houses. And now people have the ability to just film themselves, put it online, and it's like you're living on, like you're putting yourself out there, and it's everyone wants to be seen and heard. And I think it's really, because I'm coming into my 30s now, I'm really kind of starting to question, like, what is my goal with sharing this thing? And with the whole blurring of lines thing, I work from my house, so it's very difficult. Like, sometimes I'll be working all day in my bedroom, I'll be writing, I'm making a documentary next month, I'm doing like media stuff, I'm editing videos, I'm filming videos, and I might be like, in that room all day, and then I have to relax there as well. I just can't turn it off sometimes.
And how do you turn it off?
Putting my phone away, walking, watching movies. I love movies, love films, I love Netflix, all that kind of thing. I can disconnect quite easily, and and it's funny, like I put these monthly vlogs on my channel, which are just kind of like bringing people along with the month, and they're brilliant. You know, with the novel, for example, I've been able to really kind of talk about that and talk about the characters, and it's a great way for me to market myself in that, like my work, stuff like that. But people watch them and think I'm sharing everything because it's called a monthly vlog. I'm showing them snippets of a few different days, but it's 30 minutes or 40 minutes out of a month. So there's so much that I don't film. I don't film certain people in my life, and then they assume there's bad blood there. Like if I don't film with certain friends, or I don't record with, I don't record with my mom because she's an intensely private person, and I would never, shove a camera in someone's face. So I do think I think what I struggle with is that image, the image that people have of me. You have to kind of really detach yourself from that and just not care, because it can get in at you. And I've realized as well that even if I intend on a certain message being communicated with my words, sometimes that it's not picked up the way I intend it. And that's like, I sometimes get defensive. I'm like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. But it doesn't matter if you say red and they hear green. It probably is your fault for not communicating the message right. You know what I mean? So it's that kind of thing. There's challenges that comes along with it.
Well, there's always somebody ready to hear green, even if you say red loudly these days.
That's it, exactly. But I do, going back to that parallel lives thing, like I do often think, like, what would it be like to have a more quiet life, with a 9 to 5, and just sometimes I literally froth over the mouth at the idea of that, because I don't have someone telling me, you need to do all these things today. Like I have to be very self-motivated, and I live off to-do lists. And but it's great. I can't complain because I'm doing what I love.
But like reading your autobiography, I was struck by like the fact that there were lots of different areas in which you lost yourself, whether it was like social media, Facebook, MySpace, like going back, all these things. Like so like the online world is clear, and digital, platforms and that has sort of like maybe exacerbated this or allowed us to find ways we funnel or escape quite easily. But this stuff was there within you, or this anxiety was there within you way before you discovered anything.
Oh yeah. Like I have a very anxious attachment style. Like from when my parents broke up, I think, and I had quite a tense childhood. Like I do think I'm still like dealing with certain childhood things, but it's one of those things where like I have completely forgiven my parents for any because I know it's not their fault. Like I think they were in their early 20s when I was a kid. I can't imagine even having a child now, and this, they did a great job, but I there's a lot of stuff there that and it's stuff that, because it's not my stuff to talk about, I'll never talk about. But I feel like I had a lot of layers of stuff to work through in therapy that if I hadn't have done that, and I was inspired to get professional help from people online. And I do think, I hear a lot of people comment on the fact that, oh, it's like generation anxiety and everyone is just suddenly, oh, I've got anxiety, I've got depression. I do think that's always been there. I look at the generations, like, you go back and it's like so much drinking and battering of wives and all this. I think we've just gotten to a point where we're more open about it. I do think, and there's the fact that the world is so fast paced now, it has probably amplified it. But I am very grateful for the internet. And I think my main thing with that book and everything is just trying to let people know they can control how they use it. Right. Like you can control what you see, you can control who you do and don't engage with. I'm very well practiced with the old muting and blocking and all that, and I have a lovely time now when I go online. Most of the time it's just my Instagram feed is not something that I come away from like this, right. And I think that's a big thing. Like I've actually used the internet to heal myself. Like it has helped. It has really helped. And obviously too much of anything is bad, and moderation, all that kind of thing. But if it hadn't have come along, I just, yeah, I question, I wonder where I would be now, even looking at myself when I was 19. And I lost my job. I even though I was top of my class in my degree, I actually did quite badly in my leaving cert because my granny had died. I'd gone through a breakup. All these things happened around the same time, and I stopped going into school. I used to mitch off and everything, and I had to go back and do a PLC course to get into my degree when I was a bit older. And actually, I'm glad I did that because I picked something I really liked. But yeah, like I was in a bad place, and I used to wake up when my dad got in from work and he'd make dinner, and that'd be the only proper meal I'd have, and then I'd stay up all night playing computer games and writing and stuff like that, and then I'd go to bed as he got up for work the next day. And I just had this chaotic, weird existence for a long time after secondary school. And yeah, finding communities online, I just learned so much. Like, it really kind of stoked the self-education and everything like that. And I love it. Like, I can see a lot of the negatives people talk about, but it's a beautiful thing to me.
And you say, you came to terms with your parents' separation. In your book, you say that, like, you took your dad's side to begin with. Like, was that a long, like, how long did the process take that you kind of reconciled? And I think a lot of people, like, in the stuff I've gone through in my life, or stuff I went through in childhood, and I see my parents, and when you get to that age yourself, or you're like, for God's sake, like, why was I expecting them to have all the answers when I don't know anything?
Yeah, I've almost had to just brace myself in that my children are probably gonna despise me until they're in their 20s. I was so hard on my mother. Like, I really was, and I think she must have felt like, my child hates me. Like, what did I do? What did I do to deserve this level of kind of... I was so venomous, and I was really difficult teenager to the point that I ended up moving in with my dad when I was 16 because we were killing each other. Like, and it was mostly coming from me. Like, I was very difficult, but I just had so much. I'd so much resentment because you grow up and you see, the nuclear family, and I just thought it should be, mom and dad and the kids, and we have the house, and that's it. And like, this is the thing, like, because my parents broke up when they were younger, like, my dad, whatever way it worked out anyway, my dad ended up just renting, and he didn't have a house. He still doesn't. He's in his 50s. He doesn't have a house. So when I buy, I'm buying with him.
Right.
And a lot of people think I just, like, live at home and rent free and all. Like, I'm paying rent with my dad right now.
Right.
We're saving to buy together because I wouldn't turn my back and just leave him hanging. But I think that's it. I just had all this kind of, a lot of sympathy. And because at that age, you don't understand that, like, people... just sometimes things don't work out, and you really don't understand it, because it wasn't in movies or when I was a kid. It was always like, for parents to break up in a movie was this massive thing, like Mrs. Doubtfire, it's like the dad is literally dressing up as a woman to come and childmind them, and it's all, you have all this sympathy toward him. And I think it was only in my 20s I think I actually really understood my childhood and processed it,
right?
And it was very, very healing for me to do that, and to be able to now just, like, talk to my mom like normal, like, and it not be this tense thing, because I think it was always a case of everyone might have been like, oh, Melanie's like team dad and all, and we, me and my dad are very, very close. He's probably my best friend, but that's because I've lived with him for so long, And I think families now come in so many shapes and sizes and all sorts of things, and you're seeing so many people even are staying single, or they're not having kids and all this, and I think it's really important that is represented more. But it's weird, in the book I feel like in my novel it came through, like, my feelings about my dad, like, this is a slow burn romance, but the very Freudian, but like the love interest, I can't spoil it. I can't spoil it. But there's a whole situation with the feelings you might have if you've had a child and then you're single and you're divorced and all that in your 30s. Because, in fairness, when I was single I was single for 2 years, and I was meeting people, and it was a big deal. If I was on a date and someone said I have a kid, it was, it's a big, whoa, because it's just not what you imagine.
No.
but that's just normal now.
Yeah,
Like it's very common.
And talk to me about, he had a health scare, your dad.
A few.
Yeah.
He had a heart attack,
Yeah.
and he had my family, they call it the Malone gut. It's the like bowel issues.
Right.
I have IBS myself, but
Okay.
he had a big bowel operation and all that. And he, you know, it's just one of those things where I'm so annoying. I'm always just like, Dad, don't eat that. Dad, come on, go on for a walk. Like, I'm very much policing his health all the
Yeah.
time, because I want him to be around, obviously. But it does affect me a lot. Like, the worry about, like, if there's anything wrong with any of my family, that's the any of my family or my friends, that's the one thing that will really throw me off. Is I worry about other people a lot, because I'm more afraid of losing people than I am of dying. Like, I would not be one of those people to ever really have that fear of dying, but other people dying, I just can't wrap my head around them just not being around anymore, not being able to talk to them anymore. And so with him, I'm that really annoying daughter that's just,
Right,
if he has bacon on the plate, I'm like pulling it off behind his back.
Right. And do you think the anxiety is the thing that fed into everything else you had? Because you talk about you talk about eating, you talk about like porn,
they're all linked,
like porn addiction, all these things you've had, like that.
They're all so linked,
Yeah.
and that's another, like, most people I talk to, they have all these things, and it's not a case of like, I had someone one time accuse me. They were like, "Oh, you seem to just have experience to everything, haven't you? Like, you've gone through everything." I'm like, "Look at these things. They're all the same thing. They're all stemming from the same place. And once you kind of address one, a lot of the others kind of, it's like this snowball effect. Like, and it's the anxiety came. People find it hard to understand how someone can have depression and then experience anxiety, because they're kind of, you look at them as very opposite ends of a thing. And I've not been depressed for years, but I still get anxious the odd time. It doesn't turn into panic attacks very often,
Right.
like very rarely,
Yeah.
but that can still happen. And I think when you realize, like, that's a natural response, everyone has this natural stress response to because I've read so many books about it now at this point, and it's the understanding it really, really helps. And I don't think people
And you said going to see a therapist was something you got from being online too. It was because is that something you have to negotiate as well? Like, because I don't know if you describe, like, being, people talk about influencers and various things like this, but also just being, and I think you are in your book, like, this is what happened to you. Like, do you have to make clear that you don't have the answers for for your community? Like,
I always hope that that's just naturally understood, but sometimes it's not. And people email me being like, "Give me a recovery plan for my eating disorder," and I'm like, I can't. I don't even open DMs anymore, because it just that gives me anxiety.
Right.
Just the expectation that I'm there to help. It's not. It's a case of, like, if you see any kind of celebrity give an interview and they're talking about something they've gone through, that's not them saying, like, "Oh, I'm a doctor, I can help you." Like, I feel like sharing and people connecting over shared distress and stuff, that's an amazing thing. That does tend to point you down the right path. Like, the girl I was following, she had bulimia and had completely different eating problems to me, but I saw her talk about going to a professional, and not once had I ever considered that as an option at that point until then. And when I was in DCU, thankfully, the way the setup was, I found it easier to get a counsellor, and we talked through, like, CBT and all that kind of stuff, and it was just, like, so helpful. And there is still stigma attached to it. I know everyone thinks that that's all gone. It's like the way people think that we don't need pride anymore, but it's not gone. Like, if you still hear people making comments behind people's backs about their mental health, or like, "Oh, they're just being dramatic," like, "Oh, it's all a big..." You still hear these things all the time. And I think it needs to be just a case of, it's like talking, if you sprain your ankle, you need to be able to say, "I'm anxious today." You need to be able to just say that, like, because it doesn't mean everyone has to walk on eggshells. Like, it's just a fact. Like, just I honestly feel like the more comfortable I am anyway in my family setup and with my partner, like, it's very natural for us to just say how we're feeling.
Yeah.
And it's changed the dynamic, and there's just such a nice supportive atmosphere because of it.
And was that always the case with you? Do you think you were always, or like you weren't always comfortable saying how you were feeling?
Not when I was younger. I didn't even know what those things were.
Yeah.
Actually, my first long-term relationship, I was with him for on and off 4 years. It was about 3 years, but then we kept breaking up, get back together kind of thing. And there was fights we had that were so bad. And we kind of years later realised that we were both just really anxious at the time. Right. And we didn't know what anxiety meant. Yeah. I thought we were just losing our minds. Like we'd both be having a panic attack at the same time. Right. Because the argument would get so, we'd be so bad at conflict resolution that it would build and build and build. And we'd be doing things that like later I would do in a panic attack on my own in a house. And I was realising like, we kind of got in touch 10 years later, and I just wish I knew at the time what that was and like what those behaviours were, and even the way I was in a relationship at that age. Like I was constantly thinking, he was out cheating, or I was, instead of just kind of being like, right, certain things are out of my control. If that happens, I leave, I move on. Like I have such a calm approach to these things now. But back in the day, I was like, I need to have control over everything. And because I couldn't have control, that stepped into, the whole eating disorders thing, is because one of the only things you can control is what goes in and out your mouth. So they're all really linked. And I only realized that in therapy, that they're, a lot of those things, people who experience one thing will often have these other things.
And it's fascinating talking to you when you talk about like, the online community and your, like how all this has helped you, because it does go counter to what we are told about, like this is going to make you more anxious. This is going to, and yet it can, obviously, but but your experience is that you can, there's a wealth of kind of good stuff out there too. Yeah. And like as much online as offline.
Yeah. And it's like the conversation around positive thinking, a lot of people will scoff and roll their eyes at it and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the way I see that is the way you feel is largely based on what you choose to focus your time and energy on, like thoughts wise, who you're talking to, all these things. And yeah, it's not as simple as if you have a friendship that's quite toxic, just snipping that out of your life. It's not always that simple, but with the internet it is that simple. You just block, you just unfollow, you just mute, you fill up your feeds with stuff that makes you happy. Like if you're a big fan of Disney movies, you're a big fan of cute puppies, you're a big fan of recipes, like fill your feeds with stuff that you want to see, not with all this drama and gossip and all this nonsense. Like it's just all distractions from the real problems. And I think that's the main thing, is that some of the stuff I talk about might be perceived as a bit fluffy, if I'm talking about self-image and this, people are like, what's bigger things in the world? But the fact is, if you're walking around every day and you've body dysmorphia and all you can think about is a little fucking lump on the side of your stomach, how are you meant to apply yourself to like, bigger things like climate change or just anything like social issues? You can't. So I'm trying to start down here, is like just trying to make people feel more comfortable with themselves. And like I'll share just silly stuff like, oh yeah, I have stretch marks too. I have belly rolls too. Like all these things, normalizing those things makes people stop like fixating on them, and then they can, be multifaceted people. And I try and share that through my monthly vlogs and through other videos, and on Instagram stories. Like I try and show all the different things that I do with my time that isn't just kind of obsessing over my issues. Right. I just deal with my issues and then can live my life. And I think and that's all I hope to kind of do, is like reach people and connect with people, even through the fiction, even through like the first book, through my videos. It all has the same purpose really for me.
And has your attitude to like being trolled or online abuse changed over the years? Because I'm wondering, even like in those early videos, and you said, there was a lot of people, like the majority of comments were great, but there was still, there was a chunk of people making negative and derogatory comments. And I've always, and I'm not, lots of people are like this. If I do something and there's 20 great comments,
you focus on
I'll focus on the one bad one.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
So
Tell me.
the way I split it up is, if it's someone being like, "Oh, you're ugly, you're stupid," you're just stupid things like that, I ignore that.
Yeah, yeah.
If it's someone who seems to genuinely disagree with me and comes at it from a place, like, especially if it's someone who I respect, or if it's someone
Right.
who actually was a follower of mine, and they're
Yeah.
like, I have to unfollow you now because of XYZ, then I do take it on board.
Right.
And this kind of happened recently with, and I can still get quite defensive, like,
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
human being. I'm not like Miss Know-it-all grand,
Yeah.
smooth sailing. I came out and said something, and I think it's people who didn't follow me before, and people who didn't see the broader context of it from other things I've said, just saw one thing I was talking. It was to do with the housing crisis, and
Is this your tweet about the getting the mortgage? Was it?
yeah, and it was taken up really badly. But I kind of see completely now why. And even my dad explained to me, he was like, "It's the way you phrased it, and it's the way it looked on its own. Like, take out all the other stuff you've talked about to do with homelessness. Take out the fact that you've never talked about what you earned before. Take away all that. If someone just saw," he was like, "if I just saw that,
Yeah.
I'd be like, shut up, get off
Right.
your,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other." So I kind of then, and I deleted it and all that kind of stuff. But so those things do still, and it just doesn't happen that often. But
But is that something difference between Twitter and, like you say, Instagram is a nice place to be, but Twitter, then maybe you also, when something takes off, you reach people who mightn't have seen you before,
yeah,
and mightn't have known whatever context, and even
they might not know
you
where
saying
you're
here,
coming from.
yeah, and you're also saying here, like, which, I saw, like, I was aware of that tweet, but I didn't, you saying here that you're trying to buy a house with your dad, and these kind of things that contextualize it in a way that
Yeah,
280 characters can't.
yeah, and I think what my point with it was that I thought, and what I intended was like that it would add to the broader conversation
Yeah,
of the housing crisis, that even when you are doing well, it's still really, really difficult. It's such a difficult thing to solve. If, like, even, when I was in with the mortgage meetings, they were like, "Why don't you buy with your partner?" I was like, he's massively in debt. He has pilot loans out. I can't. That's not going to happen for years. And then she was kind of like, "Oh, would you not, like, I could probably afford a small house really far away from all my family and friends." And people were like, "Oh, well, at least you can do that, so shut up." And my point was that shouldn't be the option. It shouldn't. Ireland isn't. Our population isn't going mad. There's so many problems in this country to do with that, like with land and all sorts of stuff. And I think when something like that gets taken and people are quote tweeting it with real nasty captions and stuff, and I think that's the culture on Twitter, is people just love to take out their frustration on others rather than the people in charge who can make a difference. And I find that baffling, because I never there'll be stuff, obviously, to do with Trump and stuff that I'll feed into, but I even try and avoid that. Like, I think in the past I had him, like, any words to do with him just hidden from from my timeline, but then you don't want to be too out of touch either.
And is there, like, when you said that, I made me wonder about, and you talked about doing the book and, like, wondering if you, like, sometimes find it hard to believe that this is how you make your career. Is there an uncertainty with, like, the YouTube world and, like, how things can change there in a second, and you might, like, what your views are dependent upon and stuff like that?
Yeah, I've been lucky in that for the past 6 years I've had a consistent paycheck from my YouTube AdSense, but I've had to diversify my income in that. My average YouTube views might range between like 50 and 100,000 per video, which is a lot, but at the same time, that's something that is very dependent on, like, I know that when I have kids, like, I'm not going to want to film my children all the time or anything like that. I'll probably put up the odd photo with them, but I'm kind of looking forward in that, like, what am I going to do as the years go on? Like, will my audience grow with me? Will they stick around? But there's more shiny new things over here. Like, the platform might change. Platforms are constantly changing. I've seen talk about Instagram taking away the public likes, for example, which I think is a brilliant idea. But I said that, and then everyone was kind of like, "But then, what about brand deals? Like, we'll lose our money and all this." So it's just like, it doesn't matter. I'm thinking about, like, teenagers in schools don't want to have to constantly see these likes. Like, I think they should do away with that. With the radio and television, you don't see the views on them. Like, I do think there's a weird thing where you're swayed on what to watch and what to consume when you can see how many other people are interacting with that, and it takes away from you watching or consuming what you want, what you really want to. But yeah, I have a general idea of where I'm going to go, but I don't think the internet's going to, the ground's not going to eat it up. I just think it's going to keep adapting and changing, and I kind of have to try and roll with that. And if I can't, hopefully I can just keep writing and keep doing other sorts of stuff.
You wouldn't go back to teaching?
Yeah, I think I would. If I was to teach, I think I'd like to lecture in psychology or something like that. Or I was looking at going back and doing sexuality studies or something. Just something that interests me. Something I'm not going to be like snoring going into work. Like I would ideally like to continue enjoying my job. And I know I'm very privileged and very lucky to have a job that I like. But obviously I'm not going to want to let that go if I can avoid it.
Melanie, look, it's been wonderful talking to you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Really enjoyed talking to Melanie. Her book, If Only, is out now. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to Ireland Unfiltered on all the usual channels. And if you like the show, please leave a review.